US Federal Reserve officials have decided to reduce interest rates by half a percentage point at their September meetings, as we're quite unsure about how to aggressively go in order to strike a balance between labor market concerns and their confidence in inflation. Now, this meeting summary revealed disagreements amongst participants over the economist's forecast and provided specific reasons for the policymakers' decision to authorize a jumbo rate drop of 50 basis points for the first time in more than 4 years. Now, for more on these stories, we're joined now by Fisayo-Kolawole, who is Head of Equities and Alternative Asset Solutions at FB and Quest Asset Management. Laura, good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you?
Welcome to the show. It's great to have you here, as always. Well, quite a bit to get through. Let's begin with the Federal Open Market Committee's meeting minutes released yesterday. What can we make of this all?
Yes, I think the very first thing was there was a lot of conversation as to how easy it was for the central bank to cut rates. And the minutes made it very clear that it was something of a slam dunk. So everybody wanted a rate cut. The only agreement was, is it 50 basis points? Is it 25 basis points? And I think one person was calling for a 25 bips cut. But ultimately, it was sort of steady as she goes. When we got the jobs number a few days ago, and it was so strong, I think 254,000 jobs added in September, that meant that markets sort of dampened hopes of any great jumbo rate cuts going forward. So then the minutes were really sort of stale, because markets had hoped that if they saw that it was really easy for the Fed to cut rates, and they could get really excited about really fast rate cuts going into the future. But then with very strong job markets, that expectation was put paid. So it really wasn't as exciting, I think, to be fair to me anyway, as one was hoping.
Right, I was going to ask you to put your Fed hat on and let me know what you would have done if you were in that room. I mean, surely it's a decisive move in order to, protect economic expansion, right? But then it depends on what side of the fence you're sitting on.
No, but I think that the idea, cutting rates very quickly, to be honest, or that large cut, I think, was a good move. If you think about it, in 2022 June, inflation was 9%. We've had that inflation fall from 9% to 2.5%. Now, and we haven't had a rate cut since 2020. So this is the first cut since 2020. So that sort of big move to acknowledge a drop in inflation from 9% that the US hadn't had 9% inflation since like 1980 something. So dropping, inflation's come down quite dramatically. You reward that with a big cut. I think that was fair, given how far we've come with inflation and the expectation, on inflation going forward. But whether we would keep seeing sort of 50 basis points in November and, like that, I think that was what markets were trying to gauge with the minutes to see whether or not, it was going to be a really quick move. I don't know if it will be a quick move anymore.
I mean, it was a bit divisive, but of course, people will come to terms with the realities of it on the long term. But now, what impact will this have on the global markets and the dollar?
So I think, again, markets have taken it sort of very steady. I think the minutes were kind of stale. So if I was going to put it, I would say the sort of stale minutes at this point. And stale because, again, with a very strong jobs number, unemployment falling to 4.1% from 4.2%, that fear, but that, I guess, confirmation that the jobs market remains fairly strong sort of meant that, the Fed has the room to cut rates slowly and not be afraid that it is overheating the economy too quickly and things like that. So I think markets took it very steady. We had the US markets broadly sort of flat-ish. The S&P is about 20% up. Nasdaq's 20% up. So these markets had moved quite a bit in anticipation of the rate cut. I don't know that the minutes had any special reaction
to it.
No. And the dollar, I think, has done quite well. Dollar's had a bit of a depreciation following the rate cut, which is expected. I think it's up 1.4% across broad currencies. So ultimately, quiet, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very fair assessment. Good times depending, again, on where you are.
Yeah,
literally.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have the CPI, which the Fed also watches really closely, and we're set to release today. What expectations can we have of that?
I think so. That's one that it'd be quite interesting to see. Markets are expecting inflation at 2.3%. Now, that will be a drop from 2.5%. If that happens, that shows that it's going the right direction because the target is 2%. Now, my concern is that the movement from, say, 2.5 down to 2% is probably going to be quite challenging. Challenging because that's sort of that last mile, I think, can be quite challenging to get to 2%, especially when we have jobs doing as well as they're doing. As I said, I think markets added 254,000 jobs in September. Markets were expecting 150,000 jobs to be added. So that was a really strong number. That unemployment rate coming down to 4.1%, that was also something that was, I mean, it's good because it means people are spending, but people are spending means that there's, price pressures could very, very quickly heat up again. And so that's something that the Fed will be watching very closely. But again, we expect 2.3% and then just that slow slug to try to get inflation to 2% and sort of help the Fed feel comfortable with its dovish
That's going to be quite important at this point. So. It really is going to be.
It has to get there, right? I mean, that's really the main thing, yeah.
But in light of what we've seen so far and, just the body language, what expectations can we have of November's meeting?
Yeah, I mean, so a November cut, I think, is likely. Of course, November is also the election, right? I don't know what, there'll be some excitement with the election as well.
There's going to be quite a bit going on around that time.
But I mean, I think a November cut is almost a certainty. I mean, unless maybe inflation comes out today and it's like 3% and it throws everything out the water. But if inflation keeps on declining as it is and the jobs market remains quasi-okay as it has been, I think markets are expecting a cut. Now, the expectation that I saw priced in is about 25 basis points cut. So nobody's expecting the 50 basis points to happen again. The Fed has said that it expects to cut rates to 2.9%. Over the next 2 years by 2026. So it really is about understanding what that journey looks like. We're currently at 4.75 to 5% range. So there's quite a bit of a ways to go to get to 2.9 target. But it's expected that they would cut 25 basis points is, I think, what most people are calling for now.
Yeah, well, it's quite around the corner. And like you mentioned, quite a bit of activity in that month, politically inclined as well.
Exactly,
So
which I think is what people are going to be, will the Fed...
Yeah, there will be a lot of posturing in that regard.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move now to FTX, big story. Okay. But of course, cleared to repay customers $16.5 billion in assets. Well, what's your reaction? What's your initial reaction to this? First, and then we'll dive into it a bit more.
I think my initial reactions, I'm not a crypto expert. So, I mean, it's not an area that I'm too familiar with. But I think the digital asset space has been a growing area. And with technology and the way technology has been adopted so easily, people are almost more forgiving of technological platforms. It's like you can do almost anything once you put out a nice app and it looks fancy.
Which is another conversation for another day because you're so right about that.
It's true. People just have, there's just a natural confidence in a nice app that seems to be well put together. But I think what we have with FTX, to be honest, was criminal mismanagement. I was reading stories where it seemed like he was using customer funds to fund his luxurious lifestyle, his family's luxurious lifestyle. He was like giving money, like FTX was giving money to his other companies that he'd set up. So it was just, for such a large platform, you would have expected much stronger accounting protections and controls. I think the company had negative equity of about $8 billion by the time it was, all found out. So there was a lot of criminal mismanagement then. And to be frank, as financial companies or financial platforms, I think we all have a fiduciary duty to our customers. As an asset manager or a collector of money in any sense, of course, you can do all the research in the world and your customers still lose money because market prices rise and fall. And that's one thing. But it's quite another where you have mismanagement, which is what happened at FTX. I mean, which is why I think he was convicted so easy. I think his bill was like $250 million, which is like the largest in history.
Yeah, it's certainly quite alarming,
because it was just alarming. He just had a field day.
Accountability is certainly key. Yeah. And you did mention the fiduciary, responsibility that you should have, even sitting at a helm of a company like that, a large crypto exchange.
It didn't have that.
But, I mean, of course, we've seen the repercussions of it as well. So some would call it scapegoating because, like you did mention, this is probably one of many. Yeah. Because a lot of people are so much more, the markets are so much more forgiving of platforms. But what do we know about the repayment process? Is there any tranche? When is it set to begin?
So, I mean, what they said is that, first of all, it looks like they can pay back about 98% of their customers who have $50,000 or less. So that's something. So that means a broad range of people are going to get their money back. they've also promised to have that all settled within, I think I saw 6 weeks of the judgment. So they're trying to get through the payments very quickly, which again will restore confidence in the whole bankruptcy process and just get the whole thing tidied up. And of course, just putting him in jail and having him, punished for this as well, I think will be gratifying for the customers.
Absolutely.
Because you want to, you want to see, you get your money back, yes, but you also want to see some punishment.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which is fair. I mean, there have to be punitive measures, otherwise
or somebody else will do it again.
See,
people will do it again and again.
A circular fashion here. Well, we don't have a lot of time, so let's look at TikTok. Still in the tech realm, facing lawsuits. It's lawsuits here and there in the States. Do you think that these allegations are fair to begin with?
So what I will say is, social media. I'm a mom. So I think that social media, it's addictive, even for adults. So I think that children are like sponges. They should be protected. They're easily influenced. If you look on social media, you see lots of unhealthy beauty standards, unhealthy challenges that are encouraged and things. And so kids should be protected. My only concern is I don't know how much of this is because it's TikTok China, as opposed to social media as a whole.
Right.
So yes, so the scrutiny on TikTok exactly is because they're saying if you sell TikTok to an American entity, then it's fine. But then all social media have these problems. On any other one, you will see unhealthy beauty standards. You will see it is addictive. We're all scrolling through different things. It's not just TikTok. So I'd say I don't know how much of it is China, the US-China fight, and how much of it is really about the children and about protecting the young people.
So you question what really the intention behind it is. And of course, as we know, TikTok is also fighting these allegations in court. So let's see where it goes.
Exactly,
but then,
because the solution is sell TikTok to the US.
Yes, which really doesn't address the problem, does it?
Yeah, it's not like,
except you have more responsible.
It's sell to the US and then it continues its challenges or what? I don't know.
Very important question, Laura. Very important question. Many thanks. I've been talking to Laura Fisayo-Kolawole, who is Head of Equities and Alternative Assets Solution at FBN Quest Asset Management. We'll see you again very soon, Laura.
Thank
Many
you.
thanks.